It is Sunday, June 28th today. It was 9 degrees last night. The furnace kept kicking on, and it's only about 14 degrees today. Not very impressed. Anyway, I'm going to pull the gas tank out, probably the battery and the relay, just to make it easier to work on. But I'm basically going to go through and make sure that my stator is well grounded, and yeah, a few other things. I think I'll also check the compression, because when I checked it in the video where I put the engine together, it had a lot of oil and the compression was very, very high. So I'm going to have to assume that this gauge is wrong, but still. That's 200 psi showing. I doubt the camera will be able to pick out the color of the spark, but judging by eye, it doesn't look terribly healthy. So I honestly think that the firing issue has to do with the fact that I have a damaged magnet in my flywheel. Regardless of that, I'm going to pull the fuel tank, battery, relay, exhaust. I'm going to take the flywheel out and probably pull the starter off, ground it properly so that I can get rid of the jumper grounds that I put in. I'll replace the rear exhaust coupler while I'm in here, because I did get a new one. I gotta remove the water line. Remember how I was complaining about the hose routing being nonsense? I've got a hose chafing through after 2 rides. After taking a look in here, I noticed that I have an exhaust leak. My pump broke free and a couple of other things. So I am just going to haul the engine out and yeah, take care of a few problems. 10 minutes and 28 seconds. All right, YouTube, now that I have the engine out, it's easy to explain my grounding issue. Basically, this is the ground from the battery, and it connects to the starter. And I cleaned off this connection. So basically, what's happening is the powder coating is acting as a barrier between the starter and the engine, and so the engine itself is not being grounded. Apparently I had taped these holes off so I didn't get powder coating in them, but what I didn't do is file down the backside of the starter mount. Ta-da! I thought I was recording all of that, but apparently I wasn't. Not a big deal. Basically, my stator plate was grounded well to my cases, so I think the problem was just that the starter motor wasn't grounded to the engine, so the engine cases didn't actually have a ground. So they actually use a ground wire here so that they're not depending on the engine ground. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking that the ground isn't my main issue, but after taking a bit of a closer look, I can see that the JB weld that I used actually broke free from the fiberglass. It's hard to get stuff to stick to this fiberglass, so I think what I'm going to do, instead of building a bracket, I'm going to clean this up really good, sand it down, and use silicone. I think what's going on is the vibration actually caused it to break free. There's a little bit of strain on it from the hose being stiff, and just it vibrates around and cracked free. It was broken off when I got it. I reattached it and it broke off again. So I'm going to use silicone on there, and I think that should work. If it doesn't, then maybe I'll build a bracket. It's a beautiful summer's day. Great day for wearing a hoodie. Feels like it's gonna snow. I'm taking this cover off to check out my grounds. I'm going to assume that they're not great because I was very careless with my grounds. Okay, so my ignition coil was only grounded through there. Yeah, I think this ground needs to be grounded for the primary side. I'll have to look at a wiring diagram. I'm running a tap into the threads to clean out the threads so that I actually get a ground in that way. Then I'm going to sand off the powder coat where the connection is made. I just decided to drop the engine in by hand instead of using the crane and decided I wouldn't film it. I got it set in place and so I decided to come back out in the garage. I had gone in the house and basically called it a night. And then 10 p.m. rolled around and I decided I would go back out and basically turn the engine over and see if it fired any better. Put the old spark plugs in it and turned it over, and it had fire, but it looked fairly weak. So I was like, well, I'll put some plugs in it. So I just grabbed these random plugs. They're for a lawnmower. And pop them in, and then it wouldn't fire at all. So I was like, well, that's weird. Why would it not fire with these plugs? So I put the old plugs back in and it wouldn't fire at all. And I was like, great, I should have left well enough alone. I should have just left it because now I'm going to be upset because it's not firing. So I thought, well, I had the connectors apart, so maybe I'll check the connectors to see if I put them all back together right. So I started looking, and pretty much immediately I found this, which is somewhat confusing and embarrassing, and yeah, I don't get it, but this is what I found immediately. Have this wire that is supposed to go into this connector, and there's no end on it. It's never been soldered. And guess where this wire comes from? From the stator. So guess why my engine probably is breaking down when I hit bumps and jumps and almost shutting off and breaking up down low? I'm guessing that this wire just sitting in there bouncing around doesn't help anything. So maybe we found our problem. Alright, so I was able to stuff a couple of tie wraps down in and push the pin out. Let's see what happened. So apparently I fluxed it, but I never soldered it. So this was probably just sitting on the end of the wire like this, dangling around. All right. Well, I'm going to grab a couple of new ends and solder them on. Some real life jet ski repair action. I've figured out who I can blame for this. I blame my cat. Because I get partway through doing something and he gets caught on something with his leash and then he starts meowing and I have to go and free him. And I come back and I walk around for a while trying to figure out what I was doing before I left. So, it's his fault. Probably his fault. All right. It is not coming off there this time, folks. It is soldered on there really well. So that's good news. I have been assuming all this time that it was probably the magnets for the flywheel, but this would be a perfect reason for the jet ski not working properly. The stator coil feeds power to the ignition coil, which makes the spark. So if there's a poor connection there or no connection, yeah, it's going to cause problems. So in upcoming videos, I still need to do what? I'm going to try to make something to hold the fuel tank in better because I don't like the rubber strap system. What else? I'm going to work on the carrier, do some modifications to it. And I do have a flywheel for this on the way. It's supposed to be here already, but it's not. So if that arrives before I take it out on the water, then maybe I'll put the flywheel in. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.